my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country and to obey the Boy Scout law, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, morally awake, and mentally straight. It's fitting to have the Boy Scouts as our color guard this evening. George Myrick was a Boy Scout as a lad, and based upon our memories of him and what we will discover here tonight, he continued to demonstrate those qualities through all of the 22 years of his life. The qualities we all saw in George continue to influence us, and we're all the better for having known him. Those of us who knew George knew him in different ways, some from his childhood, as they grew up playing games on the streets and hills surrounding their homes. Some when George got a little older and began playing both organized and pickup games at Yosemite Playground and anywhere he could find a game to play. At Eagle Rock High School, he participated in many sports, track and field, cross country, and football, sometimes participating on varsity teams as a freshman or a sophomore. He was also very involved in leadership and service organizations. George was always a leader. He led quietly and mostly by example, but he was always sure of himself and his beliefs. He always seemed to know the right thing. During the summers between the last 2 years of high school and freshman year in college, George worked as a counselor at Camp Piles Boys Camp for disadvantaged boys in the High Sierras. After he graduated from Eagle Rock, many of us lost track of him, and when we learned he had been killed in Vietnam only 4 years later, we were shocked. We wondered what series of events had happened to extinguish the shining light that we had known in our lives. It all remained a mystery for almost 40 years, even to George's family. Then, through a series of events, the tenacity of Bonnie Marriott, who grew up across the street from George, we actually found a man named Ron Bennington, who told us the rest of George's story, the story that he will share with us tonight. Ron Bennington has faced many challenges throughout his life with determination and resolve. If an obstacle stood in his way, he'd find a way to either conquer it or work around it. He even found a way to join the Marines at age 17, and to this day, he's a Marine through and through. In war, there isn't time for the luxury of getting to know someone's history, but you do get to know those you serve with in a very intense way. Your very life depends upon them daily. When Ron met the young Navy corpsman from California who was assigned to his company, he learned different ways to view life and face situations just by watching how George lived his life. They called him Doc, and by quiet example, George changed the way Ron looked at his life, and then on March 17, 1968, George saved Ron's life and changed his future. For years afterwards, Ron suffered terrible survivor's guilt because George had saved his life and then lost his own. But Ron turned that tragedy into a blessing for everyone who knows him. He not only honors George every day with the life that he leads, but his wonderful wife Donna and their 2 beautiful daughters, Karen and Melissa, are very aware of the importance of George to their family, even though they've only known George through Ron's memories of him. George's legacy didn't end in a fiery helicopter crash in a faraway country. It lives on in the hearts and minds of the Bennington family, which is, in reality, a family of 5. It is my great honor to introduce to you a man who has become a dear friend and carries with him the legacy of George Myrick every day of his life, Ron Bennington.
Ron Bennington, Corporal, United States Marine Corps retired. I would like to thank the Eagle Rock Alumni Association for allowing me the privilege to speak here this evening to honor George Franklin Myrick. To you all, he was a beloved brother, uncle, classmate, and friend. To me, he was Doc. And to my family, he is truly a hero. You see, if it was not for your beloved George, I would have bled to death in Vietnam. George Myrick saved my life. I'm not a professional speaker. I didn't go to Eagle Rock High School. As As a matter of fact, in 1966, at the age of 17, I dropped out of high school and joined the United States Marine Corps. So if you would, please bear with me. I met George in Vietnam, and right from the get-go, I was amazed with him. He was smart, not just book smart, which he was, but he had an all-around intelligence, an uncommon common sense. He would go hungry because he would give all his food to the Vietnamese children and somehow lull us Marines into doing the same. He was a school teacher. He was a teacher, not a school teacher. But he would hold class on how we were in someone else's country and we were to act to make our mothers proud. He was caring, loving, helpful, and heroic, above and beyond call of duty. Operation Work, 17 March 1968. In the early morning hours, Delta Company, 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, moved to assault Hill 502. From the very beginning, Delta Company came under intense enemy small arms, mortar, and automatic weapon fire. Immediately into the battle, George was wounded in the left leg. Disregarding his own injury, he never stopped from aiding his brother Marines. As I was advancing on the enemy's position, I was hit. The first round hit me in the right arm. The next round hit me in the helmet, knocking me to the ground. When I tried to stand, I realized that I had been wounded. The bullet had severed the artery. I was in serious trouble. With every heartbeat, a stream of blood would squirt from the severed artery to the mud-caked ground below. Weighing only 100 pounds at the time, I thought I was a goner for sure. And then there was George, doing what he always did, disregarding his own safety. Under extreme enemy fire, he was at my side. He applied a battle dressing and a tourniquet to stop the bleeding. He pulled me down the hills, stopping to make sure that the bleeding had slowed. He assisted me in walking to the battalion aid station. He informed the battalion surgeon that he had applied a tourniquet and was instrumental in making sure that I went out on the first medevac chopper. The last time I saw him, he looked me in the eye and with reassuring words said, "Ron, you're going to make it." And I did make it. And a few days later, I found out he did. He had come back to the battle. Dave, more Marines, wounded Marines. It was only after they were cared for that he would have his own wound looked at. The medevac helicopter he was in was shot down by enemy rocket fire, and he was killed. For the longest time after, I beat myself up not understanding why me, this high school dropout, lived. And this talented corpsman from California died. There was time when the survival guilt was so overwhelming that I thought about taking my own life. While sitting on top of a bridge, getting ready to take the plunge and end the pain forever, I realized that if I were to do that, it would be such a disservice to George. The man who gave his life to saving others. And here I was about to squander what he had worked so hard for that day to save in Vietnam. I climbed down off that bridge, and at that moment, I swore that I would live my life, that George would be proud of me. In the short time that George served in the Navy and in Vietnam, He was awarded 23 medals and ribbons, 2 Bronze Stars with Combat B, B for Valor, 3 Purple Hearts, the Combat Action Ribbon, 2 Presidential Unit Citations, and the Vietnam Military Merit Medal. The Vietnam Military Merit Medal is the highest military decoration in South Vietnam during the Vietnam War. It is the Vietnamese equivalent to the United States Medal of Honor. It was awarded to those enlisted men who performed extreme acts of bravery and had given their lives in armed combat with the forces against Vietnam. In closing, last year my daughter Melissa bought a horse. He's a 6-year-old thoroughbred in training, for someday she hopes to show him. His name is Myrick, with the show name Semper Fi Myrick. Semper Fi is short for Semper Fidelis, the Marine Corps motto for always faithful. George carried me in Vietnam, and my family and I carried him for 41 years in our hearts. A day doesn't go by that I don't think of him. I will always be faithful to George Myrick. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share this story with you. High School Alumni Association, Ron and I proudly present the Soaring Eagle Award to George Franklin Myrick in the care of his sisters, Celeste and Marilyn.